Hello everyone, we're in Adobe Fresco, which is a free app for the iPad and it's a free piece of software for Windows PC. So it's really good for animated GIFs and remixing photos and illustrations from the Europeana site. It's also good in its own right as a painting tool, and it serves well as an animation tool. And the beauty of Fresco is it's got some built-in tools already to make your life easier. It's got some drawing aids, and it's got some really powerful features, which means you can animate from the get-go, really, without having to have too many animation or drawing skills. So I just wanted to show you this animation here. It's a rocket. It's going in between planets and turtles. You've got stars, you've got a background, and you've got 3 planets. So the beauty of this is it's based upon 3 Europeana pictures, and I thought I'd pick these because they fit into the science theme of this year's digital residency. So I've got a rocket here, and the beauty of this illustration is it was a card game, and it's in the Fun for Space section. It's a copyright-free illustration, and it just shows you how this rocket is made up of simple shapes. So you've got triangles, circles, squares, and rectangles. Really, that's about the gist of it. I just thought it'd be interesting to show a turtle because there's a feature in Fresco called Pose, and it means you can animate objects and sort of animals and things very easily without having to do too much work, really. And then also we've got the cell. So this is a cell texture, and you can see here I've used it for the background, and I've kind of blurred it in and blended it into the background, which is a purple. So basically on the top you've got all your tools, you've got your brushes, and you've got a variety of brushes to choose from. I've got the multicolour here one isolated here because it's quite fun to use that for, say, something like the flames and the rocket, but generally I'm going to use the half round one. And the beauty of Fresco is that when you bring in some pictures, you can use them as reference pictures and just put them off the main canvas. And the main canvas is this area where the planets are, the turtle is, and the rocket is, but the elements that are on the side don't feature in your animation, and you can't manipulate them until you turn them into what they call a pixel layer. So they serve as like Pinterest boards and interesting inspiration to create a picture. Generally I'm bringing Photoshop files into that because basically if I'm looking at an illustration on Europeana, I'm then having to cut up the bits so I can animate them individually. But for the purposes of this demo, most of the drawing is done inside Fresco. The only thing I've changed in terms of putting it into Photoshop is the turtle, where I've just literally coloured it using hues and saturation, and just to make it a little bit more standoutish, if you want, a little bit of a funky turtle. Originally I was thinking of the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, but that's a little bit more complicated if you start putting elephants on the top and planets on the top of that, and it gets a bit sort of unwieldy. So I've just stuck with the turtle. It's a sort of sci-fi theme, and I thought it'd be quite fun, and it jazzes up your animation a little bit. So as I said, the beauty of Fresco is that when you bring in reference images, if you look in the colour palette, I can just do that by tapping on this black circle at the top, and that brings up a colour wheel, but it also brings up some palettes, and that particular image for the cards is called Image 2283, and you can see all the colours that are featured in this card are now in your palette, which makes it really good if you're wanting to colour sort of illustrations based on that particular reference picture. So let's show you how I can do this. And basically this is the animation you play here. So this is called a timeline at the bottom. It features frames. Frames are like drawings, and in order to make an animation you have to make multiple frames. Usually we set the frames per second at 12, and all this means is that if you draw 12 frames, they will loop every second. If you wanted to do 5 frames, you'd have to do 5 times 12 frames, and this will all become more obvious as we go on. To show you the rocket illustration, I've really just got a few illustrations. I've only got 6, but that will loop twice in a second, and really that's just so that you can see the fire happening as it's sort of looping. And also what you've got is on the right hand side you've got layers, which are, if you can imagine, a book in a stack of books. Each layer is independent of each other, which is very powerful because it means you can animate each layer separately and time it differently and put different things on it. But I wanted to show you the groups because if we look at this rocket here, I'm just going to use the eye tool on the right hand side to show it. You can see here immediately, if I zoom in a bit, that is based on the cards, and really it's just circles and squares, as I said, and basic shapes. And if I tap into the group, you can see here it's just made of different layers of a triangle, some squares or rectangles that I've manipulated and distorted a little bit, a circle, and another triangle with some sort of elongated spheres for the aliens. And how you do that is really, if I just do another layer to show you, you've got a tool on here which is like a grid, and in here you've got things like drawing aids. And if I turn this on, I've now got a circle, but I can choose from a square, a polygon, and the polygon can be different numbers of outlines or different numbers of lines to make it more interesting shapes. I just chose the triangle, yeah, and when you've got it here like this, you can manipulate it, and you'll see that it's got a bounding box, and you can just grab the handles to make it resized if you like. And then it's slightly greyed out, but if you want to use it as a reference or a tracing tool, you just literally click on this little icon at the bottom, and then you can just trace around. There we go. And if I now turn this off, you can see the basic outline. And to prove that it's there, I'm just going to choose a random colour. I'm just going to choose a purple or a yellow or an orange, sorry, yellow, just so it stands out. And if I do that, you've got your shape. And that is literally the top of your rocket. And then, so let's just delete that for the moment. So that's a group. I'm not actually using that group. That's purely to show you as a reference. And then all I've done here, let's turn that off, is I've kind of textured it. And how you texture things in this instance is, let's just show you. So if I do another layer, I'm just going to use the drawing aids again. And I'm just going to use that triangle again. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just draw it as an outline of black. Oops, I forgot to do that. You have to click on this so you can trace it. Okay. And then I've got the triangle, and let's go back. You have a history as well of colours, what you've used in your colour wheel, if you like. And I'm just going to turn that drawing aid off and colour it yellow. And one thing you can do then is, if I want to texture that, I can just grab, say, I don't know, a brown or a slightly dark colour, dark yellow, and I could choose different brushes. So I'm just going to choose let's have a look. What should I do? Some noise control. And then I'm just going to sweep my brush like this over. And you can see the problem is that instantly it's covering not just the triangle, but the background as well. So I can tap on here and it brings up a separate dialog box. And I can then look at different things like masking. And also I can use the tools on the right hand side. The easier option to do would be actually to use this little tool on the right hand side, which is like a square and an arrow down. If I click on that, you can see that instantly my texture now fits in the triangle. And then what I might do is I might go to that particular layer. If I click on here, which is the lines with the three dots in it, with three dots in it, and I might just choose it to blend it. I could use luminosity, for instance, and I can then, maybe just lower the opacity. And again, with this one that you can see here, you've got the cell that I mentioned before. So I want to use that as a texture as well. So if I just duplicate it, and then I use my transform tool up here to bring it onto the stage or the canvas. It's underneath that triangle at the moment, so I'm just going to bring it right up. And now it's covering that. I might just make it a little bit bigger so it covers that. And again, at the moment, I can't use it as a texture because it's a reference picture. But if I just tap on here, I can convert it to a pixel layer. And then again, I can just do that. And now I've got a nice texture. And again, you might want to just lighten that. So in this case, I might want to just do it as a screen. And it just gives it that sort of glowing effect. And then you can't animate an object, whether it's three things. You have to sort of merge them together or kind of group them together. What I might do is just move that down first, I think, rather than the other way around. and then just tap on that and merge it down. Yeah, that's a bit better. So now I've got sort of nice little texture and I've got some sort of glowing things. And then if I wanted to animate that, I can, because it's one group now. And what I can do is, Fresco's got some built-in features. So I have to click on this little tool here on the right hand side, which is the 3 circles and the arrow, and I can see that circle now in the timeline, sorry, that triangle in the timeline below. And you've got things like settings. I'm going to keep it a loop. Onion skin is useful if you're doing frame by frame, which means that it's like a ghost of a former picture. If you're drawing many pictures, you might want to line things up. You can see, if I go to this and if I tap on that outside of the path, I can duplicate it. And if I just move that slightly to show you. Oh, that's the other thing. If you're in the timeline and you click on your transform tool, you get the option to transform one frame or all frames, which is really useful if you've made a mistake. And you can see here the effect is like a ghost of the previous frame to show me where it is if I wanted to line up a character. But I don't really want this, so I'm just going to tap on here and delete the frame. But then you can do lots of things with this without actually having to move it or anything. I can click on the path, and what's nice now about Fresco is you've got all of these presets, motion free presets. So with the planets, all I was doing is I've got it to breathe like that, and then you can do all sorts of things with it. I could also make it rotate like this. And you can see here it's going quite fast. That's because it's going at 24 frames a second, so it's looping every 2 seconds. If you remember, it's 12 frames a second. So I can play around with these to slow it down. If I go to, say, 60, it slows it down because now that's looping every 5 seconds. And what's nice as well is I could, if I wanted to, create multiples of this. So you get this lovely effect. But I can also scatter them. So I'll show you where this comes in useful, and you can just start again if you want and do it all over again. Or I can combine what they call frame by frame with the path. So I can do things like if I duplicate, I have to go out to the path. So if I duplicate this frame, duplicate it again, let's turn the onion skin off because I don't want it. I can use something called the pose tool, and that basically bends corners and bits and pieces. So I could have a character, like a SpongeBob character or something, and I could start manipulating the arms or the legs, whatever. So you can see here, this will go all the time, but I can also then, so it's got that, and you can again slow it down by maybe adding frames on here. So I've got 6 frames now where this triangle is just doing this kind of movement. And you can imagine it could be quite fun for a character to do that. And then I can go into the path and I can have it breathing like this. So it's scaling up or down. Or I can have it flickering like this, jittering. It could be a sort of really nervy character. And then also, as I said, I can have multiples and I can scatter them. And I can do things like rotate them or even just sway them, let's spin them to show. Okay, I'll turn it off because you don't really need that. So that just shows you that you can combine both frame by frame and the path tool. So let's just stop this for a minute and we're going to delete this. Let's go out, sorry, click off the path because sometimes when you're in the path you can't do anything because it's treating it as if you're animating. So I'm clicking on the 3 dots and deleting that layer. So basically, just to take on board what we've done, we've got a rocket which is made out of shapes. We've also got all of these planets. If you look at the planets, I'm just using the presets, and the planets are really just duplicates of each other, and I've just added some hue and saturation to them. I've added some cloud texture. So just to show you that in action, let's create another layer, and I'm just going to use the drawing aids as well to create a circle. I'm going to put it down here next to that other planet, and I'm going to use this yellow that I've got highlighted already, and then I'm just going to go back to my brushes, click on that one, click away from the bounding boxes, and then I've got that. Let's fill that in. Okay, now what I could do is I can then tap on here and I can do what they call lock transparency, and that means if I paint in there now, if I try to paint outside of it, it won't work because it's basically only going to pick up the color parts of that image. So if I wanted to create a sort of texture for it, I can go into here, and this is how I did the other planets. I can do the soft clouds, and then I can just literally do that. So you can see I've got some texture in here, and that's it. That's my planet. And I can duplicate those, or I could create it with another drawing aid, another circle, sorry, and just keep doing that. So again, we don't want this planet, so let's get rid of this one. So how do we animate something like the rocket and the turtle? As I mentioned before, the rocket is basically 3 frames where it's nothing's happening to it, and then three frames, can't say that, 3 frames where you've got some fun sort of smoke billowing. And that's useful because when it's playing like this, you can see the smoke sort of funky effect happening. And how you do that is how you create that motion. If I go to the path tool, I can literally, you can see here that it carries on doing its animation regardless of the path. I can then, in the path tool, I can use the frame by frame to show you the rocket with its exhaust fumes coming out, but then I can also just draw around the planets. And voila. Now, there's something immediately wrong with that as well, isn't there? A rocket wouldn't go up like that, so I can then look on the right hand side, and I can just click on this button that says align to path, and voila. And I can also maybe shrink it a bit as it's going up and down. And there you go. And because the settings are on loop, it will keep looping. And that's going at 48 frames, which basically means that it's going to take 4 seconds to go through its loop, if you like. And there you go. So you've now got the rocket animating. And what's nice is when you're looking at the different individual layers and you try the path, it doesn't animate everything. It's only when you click off the path, play all, that you can see everything going on. And what's nice about this as well is I've got the planets now doing their own thing. They're breathing and twirling, spinning if you like. But I've also got, you can't see it very well because it's kind of hidden, but if I just do that with the eye, you can see I've got some stars. And literally all I did is I drew some stars using my brush tool, and in the effects you've got Starscape, and that is literally one drawing that I did. Sorry, I've gone past it. Let's go back up. You can see you've got all of these there. There's a Starscape, and then all I've done here, I've used the sparkle effect and just clicked in different areas on the stage to create that effect, and I've just put a blending on it so it's color dodge, and I've just lowered the opacity, and it gives it a really nice sort of star-like effect, if you like, for a cosmos. With that background of texture, it makes it really fun and just makes it a little bit more interesting than the plain color. So now the only other thing we've got to worry about is the turtle, and the turtle is based on this black and white picture. And I've literally, as I said before, put it into Photoshop and coloured it just using hues and saturation on different parts of it. And then I've got this nice bright turtle. And what I wanted to do is to have it sort of swimming across. So it's a bit like the rocket. I've created a frame by frame illustration of it. And all I've done here is, if I copy the frame and paste it, you can see. So that is basically the turtle as was. Then I can go up to the pose tool, which is this kind of S with the arrow. And then if I pinch and zoom to go in, I can just start manipulating parts of it. And again, I'm not doing very much at all. I'm just using that pose tool. And really the idea is that then, if I just show you 2 frames, sorry, if I move this across, if I just show you the difference, you've got like a swimming turtle. So let's get rid of that a minute. So you tap on there if you want to delete it or do anything with it. And then you can see here, I've got this motion. But again, like the rocket, I've used a path. But the difference now is, if I go into the path tools, I've got a sort of path. You can just see it on the planet. The sort of, if I zoom in, you can see part of the dots that make up the path. And the turtles are underneath the planet, so they're not getting in the way. They're underneath the rocket as well. And then I've got a custom setting on this. So I've got the path, but I've also then got it shrinking 35%, and then I've used multiples here. So I just did one drawing, for instance, and I'm able to have 2 or 3 of them, or however many I want, and I've scattered them to give them that effect. And again, with some of the animation techniques, you can you can have it going at a constant speed. So if you look at this rocket, it's going the speed that I kind of drew it at. But sometimes in animation you want it maybe to come in fast or to go out fast or to slow down in the middle. A lot of animators use this thing called ease in and out. So if I show this, see, it's sort of got that slowly in and then boom, it sort of zooms away, which is quite nice. And then, so that's kind of it done really. One thing I would say is it's always useful to name your layers. So I've got a rocket here, got the turtle. Oops, I haven't named the turtle. I'm not doing so. Let's call that sea turtle. And you could, if you wanted to, get rid of these reference layers. Now, as I say, because they're off the canvas, which is this bit in the middle with the purple, they won't show any animation. They'll only show if I turn them into a pixel layer and put them on the canvas. But for the moment I can just use them as like a Pinterest board as inspiration. And then at the top here I've got a little tool because I now want to turn it into animated GIF or a video for Instagram if you like. I've got a tool here that's like a box with an arrow, and they've just changed this recently so it's much easier to see. So I want to export motion, and I can change this to a GIF because often we're dealing with animated GIFs in Europeana. I can generate the frames and it takes a second or two. And then voila. And the beauty of an animated GIF is that it just kind of loops automatically. So then I can literally save that and I've got it. Or if I wanted to do it for, say, Instagram, put some music on it, I can do it as a video. And at the moment it's 5 seconds. Say I want to do it 3 times to make it 15 seconds. I can just do that as well. And then you can see here. There we go. And that's a nice little animation, and really didn't take too many skills to do that in terms of drawing. And I think sometimes having a blank page or no ideas is daunting, but I think if you just start playing around with the brushes, you can animate them fairly quickly. And if you play around with the shapes, you can make things fairly quickly, and textures and things like that. And you can build something out of a still image really quickly. And it's fun to use, and it's fun to sort of get involved in. Just remember frame rates. If you want something that's, say, 4 or 5 seconds, you've got to look at something like this, which is the document timeline, and that shows you the extent of, even if you've only got turtles, say, at 6 frames, because some of the others are at 60, which may be the case, it's probably going to be at least 5 seconds then. And you can take frames up to more multiples, you know, it could be 96 or 144, but that might slow it down a little bit. I would say go for, if you're doing an animated GIF, probably go between 3 and 5 seconds just to make it easier to manage for you. So yeah, I hope that's given you a nice introduction to Fresco and the power that it has. And yeah, I'm quite looking forward to seeing what you all do. So thanks for now, and enjoy animating.